quick demo of this video tutorial. In this tutorial, we will discuss how to implement role-based authorization in Angular 5 and Web API using ASP.NET Identity. So inside this project, we have discussed how to implement role-based authorization in Angular 5 and Web API project. And then we have discussed how to create a role-based menu. Along with that, we have discussed how to implement role-based routing in Angular 5 projects. So I hope you will find this tutorial helpful for your upcoming projects. So please watch till the end of this video tutorial. What's up YouTube? Welcome to .NET Mob. In this video, I will show you how to implement role-based authorization in Angular 5 with Web API. This is a continuation to the previous two tutorials. In the first video, we have discussed how to implement user registration in Angular 5 with Web API. In part 2, we have discussed how to implement login and logout in Angular 5 with Web API using token-based authentication. And now in this tutorial, we will discuss how to do role-based authorization in Angular 5. So here we have the final output from previous two tutorials. In the first video, we have created a user registration form to add new users into Web API project. And in the second video, we have created a login form using token-based authentication. If you have not watched previous two tutorials, please watch that first and then continue with this video tutorial. Now let's deal with role-based authorization. So here we have the Web API project from previous tutorial. First of all, I will implement role-based authorization inside this Web API project, and then we will update the Angular 5 project. First of all, I want to update this user registration form. I want to add a provision for assigning roles for new users inside this form. For that, we will display all the available roles as a checkbox list. So here we have the database UserDB for Web API project. I have truncated test data from previous tutorials. First of all, we want to add roles inside this role table. For now, I will manually enter all roles from Management Studio. Right click on it, then edit top 200 rows. First role ID will be 1, then role name will be admin, then second role will be author, and finally we have reader. So here we have inserted 3 roles: admin, author and reader. Inside this project, I'm going to create a Web API method which will return all these roles. So first of all, let me create a controller, role controller. Right click on this controllers folder, then add controller, select Web API 2 controller empty, click on add. Name of the controller will be role controller, click on add. So here we have the Web API method get roles. First of all, let me add the required using statement. This Web API method is of the type HTTP GET, and here we have the route API / get all roles. First of all, we have created 2 variables of the type role store and role manager. We have the role manager object dot roles will return all the roles from this application, and here we have selected ID and name column from this role table. With that list, we can show all the roles inside this user registration form as a checkbox list. As we have discussed in user registration tutorial, when we submit this form data will be posted to this Web API method register. After adding role checkbox list, we will have an additional string array containing selected roles for the particular user. So we have to update this Web API method accordingly. First of all, I will add a new property inside this account model class here. It will be of the type string array, and I will name this property as roles. Now we need to add all the roles inside this array for the new user from this Web API method after creating the user here. For that, we can do this manager dot add to roles. First parameter will be the ID of newly created user that we can get from this user object. So we can do this user dot ID, and then we have to pass the array containing selected roles. So here it is model dot roles. So this line will add new records inside this user role table here. Inside this user ID column, we will save the ID of user from this user table, and inside this role ID column, we will save the corresponding role ID here. So if you have 3 roles inside this roles array, here it will insert 3 records for 3 roles. So this user role table will map these 2 tables, user and role. So from this table we can find roles associated with a user. Before implementing role-based authorization, I want to update this Angular 5 user registration form to display a checkbox list for roles, and upon this form submission we want to add selected roles for the current user. After that we will implement role-based authorization in both of these projects. We have designed this user registration form inside this sign up component here. Okay, so first of all, inside this component ng on it lifecycle hook, I want to retrieve all the roles from this web API method get roles. Sorry, here we need to add allow anonymous attribute, because in order to access this web API method we don't need to be authenticated. And let me run this application without debug mode. For that you can use the shortcut Control F5. So here we have the web API project, and here we have the Angular 5 project. Now we need to call this web API method get roles from this component sign up component TypeScript file. In order to consume this web API method, first of all I'm going to add a new function inside service class here. Here you can see the user service class inside this shared folder. Now let me add the function here. So here we have the function get all roles. We don't need to be authenticated in order to consume this web API method get roles. So that is why we have created an HTTP header object with no auth as true. In order to call this web API method, here we have called this get function from HTTP client. Here we have the URI for this web API method. Inside this root URL property, we have saved base address for the web API method. After that we have appended this route API / get all roles. This request will return an observable. So inside this component TypeScript file we can subscribe to that observable. So first of all we can call the function this dot user service. We have already injected user service class inside this component in previous tutorials. Then call the function get all roles, and we need to subscribe to that return observable here. Inside the function we need an arrow function with a single parameter data. It's of the type any. Inside this data variable we have all the roles from this web API method. Inside that we have 2 columns, ID and name from role table. In addition to these 2 properties, I'm going to add one more property selected to display checkbox list inside this form. For that we can do this. We will iterate through this list using for each function. For each element we will add this selected property as false. To store this list I'm going to add one more property here, roles. It will be an array. This dot roles is equal to data. Now using this list property roles, we want to show a checkbox list just above the submit button. For that, open corresponding HTML file, sign up component HTML, and I will add one more div here. So it will be something like this. First of all we have this ngIf directive. That means we will show this div only after fetching this roles list here. Okay, inside that we have an unordered list. Using this list item we will iterate through this roles list. On each iteration current item will be saved inside this item variable. Here we have the checkbox. Input type is checkbox. In this materialized CSS framework we have to add non-repeating ID for each of these checkbox. So that is why we have added an ID property here, and then here we have given value property that will be item.id, that means role ID, and here we have the property checked. Based on the selected property, we will decide whether we want to check or uncheck the checkbox. Below that, we have the label. For this 4 attribute, we have given same value as that of corresponding checkbox ID here. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. So here we have the 3 roles from our Web API project: admin, author and reader. Inside this form, we can uncheck or check these checkboxes, but in background we have to manually switch selected property. For that, I will add change event for these checkboxes here. We have wired up the event to this function update selected roles. Into that function, we have passed corresponding item index that we have declared here. Now we need to define this function inside the corresponding TypeScript file signup component here. So it will be something like this. We have the function update selected roles. Here we have the parameter index, and here we have updated the item from roles list with given index, and here we have switched the property selected from its current value. If it is false, it will be updated with true. If it is true, it will be updated with false. During the form reset function, we will call this function reset form. Inside that, we have to reset this property roles also. For that, I will add these 2 lines here. First of all, we will check whether we have retrieved these roles from our server. We will set selected property as false for all the items inside this list. Now during this form submission event, we have to pass an additional string array containing selected role names. In part 1, we have wired up this form submit event into this function on submit. So let's update this function for selected roles. First of all, I will declare a variable to store selected roles name. For that, we will do this. We have this X variable. Inside that, we store the selected role name. Here we have filtered all rows which is selected, and here we have returned selected roles name. Now we need to pass this array into this user service function register user, where we call this web API method register in order to save the new user. So let me pass this array here X. Now we need to update this function register user. So here we have the function register user. Here we need to add an additional parameter roles. It's of the type string array. Now we need to pass this inside this body here. I will add a new property here. Roles is equal to roles parameter. Here you can see a red squiggly line because this user class does not have a property roles. So better I can remove this user class from here, and then this body will be an anonymous object. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. Let me add a new user. As I told you, I have truncated all the data from previous 2 tutorials, so this user table is empty. Bruno 123, then we have password 123, then email will be bruno@gmail.com, then first name will be Bruno, then second name will be Nash, Bruno Nash. Then I will select 2 roles for this user, admin and author. Now click on submit. So here we have the success notification, user registration is successful. Now let me check this database here. Let me execute this select statement again. So here we have the new record for Bruno Nash. We have added 2 roles for this user, admin and author. It should be added inside this user role table here. So here we have added 2 roles for the user. Here we have the user ID that you can see here. It ends with 0D. So here we have the ID, and here we have the role corresponding to the selected roles, admin and author. So far we have discussed how to assign roles to a user in Angular 5 using Web API and ASP.NET Identity. Now back to Web API project. Now let's implement role-based authorization. We have to do role-based authorization on both ends, server side and client side. If client side JavaScript is compromised with hacking, we have to prevent the unauthorized requests in server side. So we have to do authorization on both ends. As part of that, we have to save roles associated with a user when he authenticate into this Web API project. We will authenticate a user from this login form here. As part of that, we will make a token request into this Web API project as we have discussed in previous tutorial part 2. During user authentication, we will call this function from application auth provider class grant resource owner credentials. Here we have added claims to the logged in user. Along with that, we have to add roles assigned to that particular user inside role claim. For that, we can do this. First of all, here we have retrieved all the roles assigned to that particular user. Inside this for each loop, we have added all those roles inside this role claim. To implement role-based authorization in Angular 5, we have to return roles assigned to this user as part of this token request response. In order to return the additional user roles details, we can do this. First of all, we will create an object of authentication properties. For that, let me add this using statement here. So here we have added the roles assigned to this user. And finally, we have created an object of authentication ticket. Inside that, we have passed object of this claims identity. Along with that, we have added this additional data for roles. And we have to pass this token inside this context.validated function. In order to return these additional roles details, we have to override one more function here. So here it is, token endpoint. Inside that, we have added few codes to return these data properly. Now it's time to test role-based authorization inside this Web API project. For that, I'm going to add 3 more Web API methods inside this account controller here. So here it is. Here we have 3 Web API methods. First of all, we have HTTP GET, and in order to access this, we have to have role admin, and here we have the corresponding route, and here we have the Web API method for admin role, and it will return a string for admin role. And here we have the second Web API method. In order to access this Web API method, we need author role. Here we have the corresponding route. And here we have the Web API method for author role. It will just return a string for author role. And here we have the final Web API method. In order to consume this Web API method, we need either author role or reader role. And here we have the Web API method for author or reader. It will just return this string. So all of these 3 methods are of the type HTTP GET. Now let's check how this role-based authorization works. Before that, we need to add one more user from this Angular 5 project. We have already added a user, Bruno Nash, with username Bruno and password 123, and we have assigned 2 roles, admin and author, for the user. Now let me add one more user. Username will be Fiona123, and here we have the password 123. First name will be Fiona, second name will be Green, Fiona Green. And I will assign reader role for this user. Now click on submit. So here we have successfully created the new user Fiona Green. Now let me check the database here. So here we have the new user record for Fiona Green, and here we have added one role record for the new user. Now in order to test role-based authorization using these 3 additional Web API methods, I will use Postman extension from Google Chrome. So first of all, we want to authenticate a user using his username and password. So here we have the base URL for this Web API project. Let me copy this and paste in here. So first of all, we want to make a token request. It will be of the type post. Now open this body tab. Then data format will be xwww form URL encoded. Here we need to provide the username and password. Username will be Bruno123. Then we have password will be 123, and finally we need to add one extra parameter here. Grant underscore type is equal to password. Now click on send. So here we have successfully authenticated into this web API project. Now let me try to consume one of this web API method here. So here we have the base URL. Let me copy this, and I'm going to make one more get request, and we need to copy this route from here, API / for admin role, and inside this headers we want to pass this access token as authorization. Authorization is equal to, first of all we want to add the prefix bearer. Then let me copy this access token from here and pasting here. Click on send. So here we have the response from web API method for admin role. Rest of the two web API method can be consumed because this Bruno Nash user has two roles, admin and author. Now let me try the same with Fiona Green record. So first of all we want to authenticate the user. Username will be Fiona123, then password will be 123. Click on send. Now let me copy this access token from here and pasting inside this authorization. Now click on send. So here we can successfully consume this third web API method since we have the reader role. This user Fiona Green has only one role, which is reader. So let me try to consume remaining two web API methods. So here you can see the response message, authorization has been denied for this request, and here we have the status code 401. Now let me try the same with first web API method. So here we have the same response message, authorization has been denied for this request, and here we have the status code 401. Here we have a problem with status code. Here you can see the status code as 401. 401 means we are not authenticated to access the web API method. Actually we have already authenticated into this web API project. So for this request it should return 403 forbidden status code. In order to fix this issue with status code, we have to override authorize attribute in our web API project. So back to the Visual Studio, I'm going to add one more class file here, add and class. I will name this file as authorize attribute. Click on add. Now we need to inherit this class from authorize attribute class. Inside the function, we can override the function handle unauthorized request. So here it is. Here we have override handle unauthorized request, and first of all we will check whether we are authenticated inside this project using username and password with token request. If we are not authenticated with token request, it will return a 401 request. Otherwise, it will return 403 forbidden status code. Now let me build this project and back to this Postman application here. Now let me try to make this request again. Click on send. So here we have the updated status code 403 forbidden. So here we have done with web API project. We have implemented role-based authorization inside this web API project. Now let's implement the same in Angular 5 application also. In order to implement role-based authorization inside this Angular 5 project, we need to get the roles assigned to the user as part of token request response. For that, we have already updated this function grant resource credential inside application auth provider class. So here we have returned roles as an array. that you can see inside this postman request. Here we have made the token request before, and here we have the response along with this access token. So here we have the role property. Inside that we have an array of roles assigned to the particular user. Inside this web API project, we have made the token request inside the sign-in component here. So here it is. Here we have the onSubmit function. This function is wired up into this login form submit event. So inside this user service function, user authentication, we have made the token request here. Okay, as part of this request response, we will get these responses. From there, we can get this role. Into that token request response, we have subscribed here, and here we have the arrow function. Inside that, you can see we have already saved access token inside the local storage user token. Along with that, I want to save the roles. So I will do this. I will save role array inside user roles in local storage. Now I'm going to log in inside this project using Bruno Nash record. So we have the username as Bruno123, and here we have the password as 123. Click on login. So here we have successfully authenticated inside this project. As part of the token request, we have saved roles assigned to the Bruno user inside this local storage user roles. Now I'm going to show you how you can make a token based menu inside this application. For that, I'm going to add a new component inside this project. So let me open one more terminal here. In order to add a new component, you can use this Angular CLI command ng g for generate and c for component. Then component name will be admin panel. So this component must be restricted to admin users. So let me create the component here. Inside this component HTML file, I will keep this default HTML admin panel box. Now let's add a route for this component. For that, I will open routes.ts here, and I will add a new path here. Path is admin panel, and here we have the component admin panel component. Now let's add the required import statement here. For that, hold Control, then press PD. Now click on this import statement here, and here we have the can activate as auth guard. In order to access this component, we must be authenticated into this project. Now let me add a new item inside this menu along with this logout. For that, open home component HTML file here. So here it is. Inside that, I will add a new item for this admin panel like this. So here we have an li element, and inside that we have an anchor tag, and here we have the admin panel path. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. So here we have the newly added menu item admin panel. Now let's convert this menu into a role-based menu, because users without admin role should not see this item here. For that, first of all, I'm going to add a new function inside the user service class here. Function will be like this, role match, and here we have a single parameter allowed roles. So this function will return a boolean value. Basically inside this function, here we have a parameter allowed roles. Inside that, we have to pass roles required to access some functionality from this Angular 5 project, and inside this local storage user roles, we have saved roles assigned to this particular user, and we will compare or intersect with these two roles. If there is any matching role, we will return true, otherwise we will return false. So first of all, we have the variable isMatch. It is initialized with false, and inside this user roles variable, we have saved roles assigned to the particular user by converting that JSON string back to JSON object. And here we have the for each loop. We will iterate through the roles passed through this parameter, and we will check if that role is inside this user roles variable. If there is any match, we will return true, otherwise we will return false. Now we can make use of this function in order to show and hide this menu item here. For that, let me open home component HTML file here, and here I am going to add ngIf directive in order to hide this item from the menu. Here we have called the role match function. Inside that we have provided the required role in order to see this menu item. So we need admin role in order to see this admin panel inside the home menu. Now let me save this and back to the application here. So here you can see the admin panel because this Bruno Nash user has admin role. Now let me try the same with Fiona Green user. Click on logout. Then username will be Fiona123. Password will be 123. Okay, here you can't see the admin panel link in menu. So here we have successfully implemented role-based menu in Angular 5 project. Even though if you try with admin panel path here, you can access the component that we have hidden from this menu here. For that, we have to implement role-based routing inside this Angular 5 application. In order to implement role-based routing, you can update your auth guard. Before that, open your route.ts file. Along with this route for admin panel, you have to pass the required role. Here we have passed required role inside this data property as an object. Inside that we have these roles with an array containing required role admin. Now let me open this auth guard class here. We have to update this class in order to implement role-based authorization. If we are authenticated, then we need to check whether we are allowed to access the component or path using roles assigned to the particular user. For that, let me update this if statement here. Okay, so here it is. First of all, we have to import user service class here. So here it is, private user service. It's of the type user service class. First of all, we will store required roles for this path from this data property. As we have given roles here, we need to store that inside this roles variable, and then we will check if there is any required roles. We have to match that role with current user roles. So that is what we have done. If it is true, then we will allow the user to access this component or path. Otherwise, we will navigate the user into this forbidden path. Inside that, we will show you are not authenticated to access this resource from this project. For this forbidden path, we have to create a new component. After that, we will return false in order to prevent the user from accessing this component. We have to create one more component. So let me create the component. In order to create the component, you can do this ng for generate c for component. Then component name will be forbidden. Hit enter. For this new component, I will add a new path inside this routes config here. So here we have the path forbidden. Here we have the component forbidden component. For that, we have to add the required import statement. And here we have the can activate array with auth guard class. Now let me design the component HTML file, forbidden component HTML. Now let me copy paste the HTML code that I have prepared for this component. So here it is. Inside this HTML, here we have an img control to show an image. In order to work this image, we have to add this 403 PNG image inside img inside assets folder. So first of all, let me add the img folder inside the assets folder here. Right click, then new folder. I will name this folder as img. Now here we have the image 403.png. Now let me drag and drop inside this img folder here. Now let me save all of these modifications and back to the application here. Now let me try the admin panel path. Admin panel. So here we have redirected to forbidden component HTML because of the role-based routing inside the Angular 5 application, because this user does not have the admin role. Now let me try the same with Bruno Nash record. Click on logout. Username will be Bruno123, then password will be 123. Click on login. If I click on this admin panel, so here we are inside the admin panel because this user has the admin role. So here we have discussed how to do role-based routing, and then we have discussed how to show and hide items from menu based on role assigned to the user. Now for the integrity of this role-based authorization, we have already implemented role-based authorization in Web API project. Suppose if some request from this Web API project return 403 forbidden status code because of the roles assigned to the user, in that case we have to check whether we have a 403 forbidden response from Web API project. For that, you can update HTTP interceptor file here, auth interceptor. Along with this 401 status code, we will check 403 status code also. If there is any 403 status code, we will return the user to the forbidden component. Now let me show you one more thing. If you want to do some operation based on the roles assigned to the user, you can do this. Suppose if you want to do some operation if the user has the author role. In that case, you can do the operation inside this if statement here. So that's it guys. In this tutorial we have discussed how to implement role-based authorization in Angular 5. Along with that, we have implemented role-based authorization in Web API project also, and we have discussed how to implement role-based authorization in routing. As part of that, we have discussed how to create a role-based menu in Angular 5. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video, and for more awesome videos like this, please be subscribed to this channel .NET Mob. You can download this project source code from the link given below in video description. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.